They saw a black man test driving a luxury car and jumped to the worst conclusion: handcuffed, humiliated. But what they didn't know, he owned the dealership, and their entire careers were about to crash. It was just after 10 a.m. on a bright Monday morning when Elijah Brooks pulled into the lot of Brooks Auto Gallery, a sleek, glass-walled dealership nestled in the heart of suburban Atlanta. Wearing a simple black hoodie, jeans and sneakers, Elijah didn't look like a typical luxury car buyer or the owner of the most profitable black-owned dealership in Georgia. He had just come from the gym. No suit today, no chauffeur, no boardroom agenda, just a quiet walkthrough of his business before meetings later that afternoon. His staff knew his casual style, and so did the customers who had come to appreciate his authenticity over the years. But two local police officers sitting in a patrol car across the street didn't recognize him. Officer Daniels, a grizzled veteran with a chip on his shoulder, squinted through the windshield. "That guy look like he's up to something? Maybe casing the place?" replied Officer Hughes, his younger partner. "Could be a break-in. Let's check it out." Elijah stepped out of his matte black Mercedes G-Wagon and began walking toward the main building when the red and blue lights flicked on. He paused, eyebrows furrowing, already knowing what was coming. His phone buzzed, a missed call from his assistant, probably wondering where he was. The officers approached quickly. "You got business here?" Daniels asked, already reaching for his belt. Elijah gave a half smile. "I own the business here," Daniels scoffed. "License and registration. Now." Elijah raised his hands slowly, disbelief washing over his face. Customers and staff inside the dealership started noticing the commotion through the glass. "Is this really happening?" he muttered. And yes, it was. Because they didn't see a businessman, they just saw a black man in a hoodie, and that, to them, was reason enough. The morning sun bathed the sleek hoods of the cars in golden light. Darius Miles adjusted his tie as he stepped out of his Range Rover and walked across the dealership lot. Though he dressed down in jeans and a collared shirt, there was no mistaking his quiet confidence. He moved like someone who owned the ground beneath his feet. As Darius approached the building, a couple browsing near a Mercedes AMG watched him curiously. He smiled at them and nodded, not thinking much of it. But inside the dealership, tensions were already building. A staff member, Marcus, had just stepped away from the front desk when a white man named Greg, new on the sales team, noticed Darius on the lot and immediately assumed he was a loiterer. Greg whispered to another employee, "Is that guy just wandering around? Where's security?" Before anyone could respond, Greg was on the phone, reporting a suspicious black man casing the vehicles. Within minutes, a patrol car pulled up, two officers stepping out with hands already hovering over their holsters. Darius was just unlocking the showroom doors when the officers stormed up behind him. One barked, "Sir, step away from the building." Startled but calm, Darius turned. "Excuse me? I work here." The shorter officer stepped forward. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Hands where I can see them." Darius blinked, confused. "This is my dealership." They didn't believe him. With no attempt to verify his identity, they grabbed his arms, yanked them behind his back, and cuffed him on the spot. Customers inside began filming, some gasping, others whispering. No one knew yet. The man they were humiliating in front of cameras didn't just work here. He owned it. As Darius was shoved into the back seat of the squad car, phones were pointed from every direction. Two customers, a black couple, filmed the entire scene, narrating their disbelief. "They didn't even ask him for ID," the woman said, her voice trembling with frustration. "They just cuffed him like he was stealing something." Inside the dealership, Marcus finally returned to the front and caught sight of the flashing lights. "What the hell?" he muttered, rushing outside. Greg, standing nearby with folded arms, smirked. "Don't worry, cops took care of that guy sneaking around." Marcus stopped cold. "Sneaking around?" He turned to look at the squad car, then recognized the man inside. "Oh my God," he whispered, panic rising. "That's Mr. Miles. That's the owner." Greg's face paled. "Owner? Wait, what?" "Yes, owner," Marcus snapped. "You called the cops on the man who signs your checks." Meanwhile, Darius sat silently in the back seat, watching everything unfold through the window, his jaw clenched. He could hear the voices of angry customers demanding answers. One woman screamed, "You arrested a businessman because of the color of his skin." The taller officer, visibly uncomfortable now, started reviewing his body cam footage. "I think we may have made a mistake," he whispered to his partner. "You think?" The other one shot back, now sweating under the gaze of half a dozen phones capturing every second. In a moment that would later go viral, Marcus ran up to the car window, knocking urgently. Mr. Miles, I'm so sorry. I'm getting this fixed. Right now. Darius's eyes met his employees. Calmly, he said, let them finish their performance. We'll talk inside, once they realize who they're dealing with. The officers stood frozen, realizing the growing crowd was not going away. The taller officer opened the squad car and tried to regain control of the situation. Sir, we may have acted prematurely, he said, fumbling with the handcuffs. Can we see your ID? Darius raised an eyebrow. Now you want my ID? The officer looked nervous. Look, it's just a misunderstanding. Darius leaned slightly forward. You never asked for ID before, you assumed, and you acted on that assumption with force. Before the officer could respond, Marcus appeared again, phone in hand. Sir, I have your corporate credentials pulled up. I'll show them. But Darius held up a hand. No need, Marcus. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. The line connected quickly. Renee, he said, get me Charles from corporate legal, and call the mayor's office. We're going to have a meeting. The name dropping caught everyone's attention. The officers looked at each other, alarmed. Wait, the mayor? The shorter cop asked. Darius didn't answer. He simply stepped out of the vehicle with the poise of a man who'd been here before, not in the back seat of a squad car, but in the middle of situations where power shifted quickly. And he knew exactly how to use it. Greg, now pale and shaking, walked toward him, stammering apologies. Sir, I just thought. Darius turned slowly. You thought wrong. And you acted wrong. We'll be discussing your employment status soon. As the police stood awkwardly, unsure what to do next, Darius faced the crowd and spoke for the first time to them. Let this be a lesson, he said, voice steady. Assumptions backed by power are dangerous. But truth eventually shows up, and so do consequences. By the time Darius stepped into his office, the media had already caught wind of what happened. The video footage was spreading like wildfire. One clip on social media had over 250,000 views in just under 2 hours, with the hashtag #HeOwnsTheLot trending rapidly. His executive assistant, Renee, was waiting. Sir, the city attorney is on hold, and Charles from legal is in the conference room. Darius nodded. Good. Have PR draft a statement. We're not letting this slide. Meanwhile, down in the showroom, Greg was packing up his things. HR didn't even wait for Darius to make the call. The footage was enough. No dealership could afford that kind of racial scandal in today's world, not with that level of visibility. Upstairs, Darius joined Charles, his legal counsel. What's our best route here? Charles leaned forward. Public apology from the police department, internal investigation into both officers, and a lawsuit against the city for wrongful detainment and racial profiling. Darius nodded. File it. Back at the police station, the two officers were being grilled by their captain. You cuffed a man in front of his own business with no ID check, no protocol, just vibes. Sir, he didn't look like... The shorter one began, before the captain cut him off. Didn't look like what? A business owner? Welcome to 2025, officer. Pack your things. As the day wound down, Darius stood in his glass office, watching the last rays of sunlight hit the dealership sign. For a moment he reflected, not on the humiliation, but on the power of response, of dignity under pressure. Because today wasn't just about him. It was about every black man who had been arrested for simply existing. And this time, he owned the ending. The mood shifted like a thunderclap. Malik, the dealership owner, stood calmly with his wrists bound by cold steel cuffs. The employees watched in stunned silence as the two officers led him through the showroom like a criminal. Phones discreetly emerged. The receptionist, finally recognizing Malik, gasped audibly. Her shaky voice barely formed the words, That's the owner. But the officers weren't listening. Officer Branton smirked. Owner, nice try. We got a call about a suspicious man near a McLaren. Turns out he's wearing designer sneakers and loitering like he owns the place. Malik didn't flinch. Because I do. Check the LLC name on the building, M. Sinclair Motors. I suggest you run it. But Branton wasn't here for facts. Save it for the station. Meanwhile, Aaron, the dealership manager who had gone on lunch break, returned just in time to witness the horror. His jaw dropped. Wait, officers, you're making a mistake. That's Malik Sinclair. He owns this entire dealership. Officer Jensen looked uneasy now. Then why didn't anyone say that earlier? Because they didn't believe it. Because he was black and wearing streetwear. Because systemic bias doesn't ask questions, it acts. Aaron rushed to grab documentation, ownership records, pictures, even news articles on Malik's entrepreneurship. He shoved them into the officer's hands. Branton paused. This can't be real. Jensen was already reaching for his radio, requesting a supervisor. Meanwhile, Malik stood calmly, his dignity intact even as embarrassment and anger rippled through him. Cameras rolled. Customers began whispering. Whispers grew into murmurs, then into outrage. "You racially profiled the owner?" one customer shouted. "I'm not buying from here again," yelled another. It was no longer about just Malik. The dealership's image was now under siege, and the footage was going viral. Within an hour, the videos from the dealership were all over the internet. TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, every major platform was flooded with clips showing Malik being arrested inside his own showroom. The hashtags #owner-in-cuffs and racial profiling at its finest began trending nationally. Comment sections exploded. "This is why we scream Black Lives Matter. This man owns the place. Imagine building your empire just to get cuffed in it." They saw a black man next to a Lambo and assumed criminal. Disgusting. The local news caught on fast. Reporters arrived at the scene before Malik had even been fully uncuffed. Cameras crowded the glass doors, and microphones pointed toward angry customers and shaken employees. Inside, Branton finally released Malik's wrists, the cuffs clinking loudly as they hit the desk. This was a mistake," he muttered, eyes no longer smug but panicked. "We were just doing our job." Malik stared straight through him. "No, you weren't. You were doing your assumptions." The dealership's PR team rushed in. An assistant whispered frantically to Aaron, "We need a statement. This is burning down the brand." Meanwhile, Malik's phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from civil rights lawyers, requests from CNN and MSNBC, celebrities even chimed in. One rapper tweeted, "Salute to Malik Sinclair. Sorry you had to go through that, King." Outside, protesters started gathering with signs that read, "Arrested while black and he built it. They broke it." Malik stood at the center of it all, not broken but rising. And this time, everyone was watching. While the dealership scrambled to save face, the corporate headquarters of Sinclair Automotive received a different kind of shockwave. Malik was more than just a dealership owner. He was a rising star in their executive pipeline. His name had been floated for regional VP the week before. Now, their internal email systems were flooded with press inquiries and angry complaints. The CEO, a sharp but media-cautious woman named Elaine Cooper, summoned an emergency call with her executive board. They watched the viral footage in silence. When the clip ended, she sighed heavily. "Is this how we want to be known? That our black partner was arrested in his own showroom while white cops and customers stood by?" Someone on the call replied, "We have to respond, now. And boldly." Meanwhile, Malik was already prepping a press conference. His attorney, Carla Grant, stood by him, one of the nation's fiercest civil rights defenders. She was already drafting a racial profiling lawsuit, not only against the two officers, but the precinct. The dealership manager, Aaron, personally apologized to Malik. "I froze," he admitted. "I should have done more." Malik nodded but said nothing. Corporate headquarters finally released a statement. "We stand unequivocally with Malik Sinclair. What happened was not only unacceptable, it was a reflection of biases that cannot exist in any place of business. We will be reviewing all our protocols and pursuing legal action on Malik's behalf." The dealership went into full crisis mode. Meanwhile, Malik's story reached beyond automotive circles. It became a national conversation. And Malik wasn't just surviving. He was leading. The next day, the two officers, Branton and Jensen, were summoned to the precinct's internal affairs department. What had been a routine call was now an escalating PR nightmare. They walked in expecting a slap on the wrist. Instead, they were met by two federal investigators and a representative from the mayor's office. "You racially profiled a business owner in public," one investigator said. "And the entire nation saw it." Officer Jensen squirmed. Branton folded his arms. "We responded to a call and failed to verify anything," the mayor's aide snapped. "You embarrassed the city." Later that afternoon, Malik arrived at the police precinct for a closed-door meeting. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about accountability. Carla Grant, his lawyer, sat beside him. When the officers walked in, Malik's eyes met theirs. "I built that dealership from nothing," he said. "I employed over 60 people, and in 6 minutes, you erased my dignity in front of them all." Branton finally muttered, "We're sorry." Malik leaned forward. "Sorry doesn't undo the trauma, but maybe, just maybe, if you can own your failure publicly, something good can come from this." Carla added, "We'll be filing a civil rights suit, but we're also calling for a new community training program, led by Malik." That stunned the room. Malik stood. "If I can be humiliated in my own building, then we're not training officers, we're training stereotypes." And for once, Branton had no smart reply. The press conference was packed. Reporters, activists, business leaders, even politicians gathered as Malik Sinclair stood at the podium in front of his dealership. Behind him was a massive screen showing the words, "Respect starts here." Malik began, "A week ago, I was handcuffed in this very lobby. Not because I broke the law, but because I looked like someone who could." He paused, letting the silence speak. "But this isn't just my story. This is the story of countless black men and women whose success isn't enough to shield them from suspicion. I was lucky enough to have cameras and a platform. Most aren't." He introduced a new initiative, the Sinclair Standard, a training program for police departments, dealerships, and corporations to address unconscious bias and racial profiling. Corporate sponsors lined up to fund it. The city announced reforms to its police training curriculum, with Malik invited as a consultant. The two officers, in a televised moment, apologized publicly and agreed to participate in the program. People who once doubted him now stood and clapped. But Malik didn't want applause. He wanted change. And he had built it, just like his dealership, from the ground up. The camera zoomed in on his face as he finished. "I didn't just reclaim my business. I reclaimed the narrative. Fade out. If that twist hit hard, you have to see what happens next. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because the next time someone judges a book by its cover, we're telling the story."